I know, right? Dream drop distance is the best one. I mean, it's... Do you have a... Was that a smoke alarm? Do you... Oh! 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 Has this ever happened to you? You're out in public, minding your own business, when all of a sudden, the crushing weight of the free-falling stock market reminds you just how much money you've lost in investments. Here at Coinflop, we offer an alternative solution to traditional investments, thanks to our unique portfolio of cryptocurrencies with funny four-letter names and expensive JPEGs, all powered by our Web3 compatible AI blockchain distributed DeFi ledger. I said the words, you have to invest. What makes this different than the current stock market? It's simple. We don't need personal change at the highest level of government or sweeping regulation. We're always losing money. Without any outside factors, we're losing so much money. Approximately 200 years ago, famous painter Francisco Goya passed away, leaving behind decades of work bookended by the Black Paintings, a collection of oil-based works whose bleak themes and muted palettes are likely driven by his pessimism towards Spanish politics, dissatisfaction with his early work, along with a crippling fear of old age and madness. 3 years earlier, in an identical mental state, I made a video on NFTs. Get it? Because I never upload, and I'm crazy. Or worse, possibly Spanish. In my previous video, while I mostly focused on the non-fungible token aspect of the cryptocurrency, I also did describe cryptocurrencies as a whole just enough so that the video would work and be understandable, and I'm not changing that today. They weren't worth my time then, they're worth less now. That was all sparked by a report that asserted 95% of NFTs were worthless. This comes from a site whose entire purpose is to promote crypto gambling, which is akin to a report on the destructive effect of monopolies published by Woolworths. The examples I used were Dreadfuls, Pudgy Penguins, Matrix, and Axie Infinity. One of them has done terribly, and the others worse. Dreadfuls was the first collection I brought up because it was so generic and so nothing in both its presentation and analytics. I could use it to convey the state of the market as a whole. If you're wondering what I mean by presentation, I mentioned they were ugly, without elaborating, which was a misstep. I should have explicitly stated it in a 20-minute sidebar rapped to the beat of Yummy Righteous remix with an equally bratty attitude, but those days are behind me. I critiqued the actual collection for displaying very obvious signs of a dead project, complete with 2 accounts wash trading in hopes of recouping whatever they've lost on this, and while the analytics clearly supported my view, they've somehow gotten worse. DApp Radar, or DApp Radar, who cares, hasn't recorded information since the 21st of February this year, has marked the collection as inactive, in the same way that Chernobyl is below capacity. Whatever trade volume it had at the time, legitimately has evaporated, much like their Twitter account and website. What exactly happened is lost to me. Like many collections, it didn't actually make waves beyond its minting. Most discussions I can find on it in any reputable manner are several years old and hilariously wrong. Who knows, maybe they've not gone anywhere. Maybe I should stay tuned, keep holding that bag. Or maybe I'm literally shooting at the hoop the size of the sun. Their very generic summary is some of the only remaining first-party information, and it is actually almost entirely accurate. They describe their apparent rug pull as a tongue-in-cheek take on villainy, greed, and evil, when it is, in fact, just evil. I would like to say the collection's been a failure, if not a complete disappointment, but that would imply I knew what its purpose was. Outside of the, it will be more valued, new blue chip, there isn't much, distinguishing this from other equally ugly pieces of garbage, which I suppose does make it kind of a little interesting, but in a very non-meaningful way, like a fireworks display inside of an abandoned mine. The most viewed contemporary information I could find was from just a guy named Gavin, where he points out 4 NFT projects he predicts to be high-priority targets to get in on the ground floor. Oh god. Every single collection this guy mentions created in both price and trading volume within a year of minting. That is not important. What is interesting is that almost everything relating to Dreadfuls ended up not really being true, which does kind of make it an interesting time capsule / foreboding omen / mysterious figure that disappears when a bus passes. And not just in the sense that this video was released a day after Russia invaded Ukraine, which Gavin points out may negatively affect NFT prices. And I think maybe Gavin of Delphi knows more than he's letting on. Someone find him. Tell me how I'm going to die, Gavin. Tell me now. Next up is Pudgy Penguins, which was by far the most successful collection I spoke about at the time. Their value was actually trending upwards, they had real trade volume, and the project's plan existed and was entirely plausible. $1 billion of seed funding now! The difference between Pudgy Penguins and the previous collections I've mentioned is immediately apparent, to the point where having more than a single functional page of analytics is actually impressive. This is in spite of actually being pretty old. They've already outlasted the vast majority of collections minted after its release, which would imply that Pudgy Penguins has cracked the code. However, much like a relationship with a guy that peaked in high school, the problems arise the moment you start paying any amount of attention. Its total volume has increased, but the average price and floor price have dropped rather steeply, amplified by the coinciding devaluation of Ethereum, which makes the 36% drop in price more like a 54% drop in price in terms of money that you can buy food with. Mind you, this data is collected near the peak of like a month-long rise. If this was collected earlier, the numbers would be considerably worse. But to be fair, you could actually make an argument that the devaluation of the base currency isn't something that you could hold against the project. But on the other hand, if the project was so successful it increased Ethereum's price, it's the only thing they would ever mention, and to be even more fairer to myself, the volatility of the market was a known factor for years. You can't complain about the horse you hitched yourself to isn't going anywhere when it was dead when you arrived. Which is something I want to highlight as the defining example of this video. The last time I spoke about NFTs, I made it clear the examples I used were not necessarily exceptions to the claimed inevitable failure of the sector, they were just earlier, or experiencing it slower. And so far I have been... Look, again, it's the size of the sun, I'm not a prophet. Pudgy Penguins is, in my research, the single exception to the rule. They're still also not. They're doing the right things as a business to foster a community, develop brand recognition, and find revenue streams over the course of multiple years. They have more in common with a real business than the vast majority of NFT projects, and it still literally doesn't matter. The actual Malcolm in the Middle is still an ugly picture of an ape. Like, it's still beholden to all the technical limitations and ideological black holes that plague the entire sector, without even mentioning the problems of the foundation, with it being cryptocurrency that has its own set of problems, rife with unregulated gambling at worst, and at best a speculative market for unregulated gambling. When all of that is taken as a whole, it creates a perfect set of conditions to slowly lose value in between rapidly losing value. In an interview with EO, their current CEO, maybe CFO, I don't actually care, Luca Netz, describes his genuinely difficult childhood and how that shaped him into the person that ended up running, by what is all accounts, a somewhat successful startup. It becomes obvious though how little NFT is actually in this NFT project when you realize he didn't even make them. He came in after they were minted. He's more of a traditionally business-pilled guy and saw Pudgy Penguins as an avenue for an untapped collector's market. Oh, and by untapped collector's market, he means he wants to onboard children into the crypto grift by attaching a wallet and NFTs to the physical plush, even referring to it as a Trojan horse, seemingly unaware or uncaring of the historical implications. So it seems even the successful projects aren't successful and are actively targeting children. These people are scum and I don't think they should exist. Captainz was a collection I briefly mentioned, and so briefly, in fact, I didn't even say that they were created by 9gag, whatever that means in practice. And while the ecosystem now actually exists, as opposed to last time, the NFTs have dipped by almost 90% in price. So, hey, webpage exists. What more could you want? The thing is, it's easy to have a high valuation and be a blue chip, a 10x, when the purpose is ethereal. When it starts existing, it becomes apparent that it's just like more crypto gambling, which, how much more would this bucket be worth if I told you it was full of water? They say, neck deep in the ocean. I glibly remarked that Matrix's NFTs relied pretty heavily on not being sued, for the obvious similarities to Valorant, I should have also mentioned Counter-Strike, because that's a Counter-Strike map. Also, the NFTs aren't worth much. One of the collections is doing better than the other. What purpose either of them have is still unclear. For what it's worth, I did try and play this game in order to capture footage. Its main push is for mobile platforms, but it isn't available in Australia, I assume because they have correctly marked this as a scam. Every second I spend trying to play some of these crypto games, it's just like... I own Elden Ring. I have no use for you. What the... The most interesting development, in my opinion, has been Axie Infinity. Because there's like an actual Axie game ecosystem, which, to be fair, I didn't even consider. Hey, the machine, it's out of fuel. Surely this ends soon, I say, turning my back as Sky Mavis sweats, hands in their suspiciously machine-shaped pockets. Why try and revive the dwindling economy of a failing game when you can just make a second economy inside the already existing one? Idiot. There are now about 1 billion Axie games that use their branding. Most of them appear to integrate the Axies that you own into the game. To what degree, I don't know, I don't care. I'm not downloading these games, and I was gonna make a joke about a Trojan horse, but apparently that's not what it means anymore. There are 2 match 3 games that are about as generic as you could possibly imagine. There are 2 farm/management games with varying degrees of AFKing, and most importantly, Axie Infinity Classic and Origins, and this is an unreleased game don't care about. Boo! Oh my god, he's dead! When people outside the cryptosphere say Axie Infinity, they are talking about Classic, because that's the one that made the most buzz on Twitter. It's when the economy was at its peak, and like, it existed. And also Origins, and they're the same game. Look, Origins was like made as an attempt to soft reset aspects of the game, keep what works, change what doesn't, which is a reasonable goal if you aren't aware how bad the original actually was. This also gives Sky Mavis the ability, if they want to, perhaps change certain systems to rely more on numbers than player skill, drastically reducing the skill ceiling and the effect of non-marketable traits like individual ability, much like how Honkai Star Rail, in comparison to Genshin Impact, relies much more on team composition, stats, and having the right elements, because removing the ability to, for instance, dodge, makes the fights more direct. Your stats against theirs, hence creating a system where good players, by design, cannot overcome stronger battles, encouraging them to spend money to place more thumbs on their scale. I'm not saying they did. Along with Axies, you can now purchase charms and runes, giving direct, if not lackluster, improvements. I mean, the scale is more thumb than metal at this point. In case you were wondering, despite being the most competent Web3/crypto game in my experience, it is still not a good game. It offers literally nothing over any rudimentary card game or your imagination. It gets completely blown out by Slay the Spire, which it clearly takes inspiration from. I was even going to go into a detailed discussion between Classic and Origins, but they're actually really similar. Like, more similar than I thought. So the only notes I ended up writing down was that the tutorial doesn't even explain any mechanics, it just tells you what to do verbatim. Also, the card effects, always present. You don't need to hover over them, the entire screen is just cluttered with random stuff. I hate it. It, and all their other projects, innately feel like a rehash of a game that already exists in Sky Mavis's library, as an attempt to keep the grift machine going, as they provide new uses for their stupid deformed pets every few months. And to be fair, the relevant coins, AXS and SLPC spikes around important dates, as don't press that button. Stop it! Ugh! These successful projects have lost a lot of value, but it's a suspicious amount of value. Like, how does a coin from a project that is already deemed successful lose 70% of its value in a few months, while it is always rewarding to succeed by one's own merits? A burden shared is a burden halved. And like most history, in this analogy, the burden is how do we make things work, and the burden is shared with the US government. Oops! NFTs and most crypto coins we're like definitely going to lose money regardless during that same period. However, in early February, the US government began enacting and simultaneously delaying seemingly random tariffs on Mexico and Canada. 2 months later, Donald Trump announces a series of global and definitely provably random tariffs, causing a significant amount of instability on the global market, which has been further amplified in the crypto sector. The global economy is complex and big enough that it can be metaphorically compared to a country, and as a result, it's considered pretty stable. But you can just launch nukes at countries. They're not invincible, and in this analogy, the crypto economy is less of a country and more hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby. Some of you are getting an odd sense of deja vu, or in my case, cluster headaches. It's difficult to tell. What makes this interesting is the switch up. Regulatory legislation failing and market instability are par for the course. Crypto dorks stay losing. However, before the election, Trump made multiple promises aimed at boosting the crypto economy, positioning himself as a crypto-friendly candidate, even speaking at the 2024 Bitcoin conference alongside other extremely respected names in the crypto sphere like RFK Jr., Russell Brand, A Plague of Locusts. And this is oddly one of the promises he was very quick to make good on. In January, World Liberty Financial, a crypto financial company heavily linked with the Trump family, launched Trump, a meme coin on the Solana block. This isn't relevant. Why am I saying this? I'm sorry, I've been wasting your time. Oh, stupid! Come on! Only 2 months later, in early March, Trump announced the names of cryptocurrencies that he had previously already promised the US government would begin stockpiling if he won. Those being Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, ADA on whatever, it doesn't matter, and SOL on the Solana blockchain. This announcement noticeably increased the value of those coins and coins on the same blockchain. Oh my god, it was relevant. So crypto did see a significant period of growth. Until it didn't. Also, a new stablecoin competitor, USD1, was launched by World Liberty Financial behind the single largest investment into a crypto company from Binance and Abu Dhabi-based company MGX. Oh my god. I don't actually expect cryptocurrencies to be at such a low for too long. They may have already rebounded by the time this video is out. Lord knows these frivolous knickknacks shaped like Pepe heads don't stay down for good, but it is clear they are in a rough spot no matter which color the numbers land on. Crypto and NFTs have been trending down for their entire life at this point, and it's clear based off certain Twitter interactions, many were hoping, if not literally praying, that this government would find a way to somehow legitimize the industry and take them to the promised land. Why any of this should happen, as in why does any of this exist, as in what does it do, but for real though this time, are all questions that are yet to be answered, making this a solution very much looking for a problem. Or looking for a problem to poach, because the problem has already been solved by the economy we already have. So it's trying to steal that, all the while avoiding eye contact and blushing furiously. So that's it. This video was much longer at some point, but I have to finish writing it and release it. Oh my god. I have a few ideas bouncing around in the old noggin. Nothing really. I mean, let's all just sit here, you know? Until next time. Yeah, I don't know what to do. Bye-bye.